They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from your own blood. I never thought my parents, the two people who raised me, would be the ones to twist the knife. It started with a phone call. I was walking home from work, balancing a bag of groceries, when my phone buzzed. Mom's voice spilled through the speaker, unnaturally cheerful. "Ilara, sweetheart," she said, pausing just long enough for Dad's chuckle to slip through the background. "We wanted to say thank you for the wedding present." I frowned, confused. "What wedding present?" Then Dad chimed in, laughter shaking his voice. "Your apartment. We sold it this morning. The money went straight to your sister's wedding fund. $100,000? Isn't that generous of you?" The bag nearly slipped from my hands. My apartment, my safe place. The one thing I'd worked late nights, double shifts, weekends for, gone, behind my back, without a word, just. To fund a celebration. I could hear clinking glasses, laughter, like it was all one big joke. "Don't look so shocked," Mom added. "Family sacrifices for family. You'll understand when you grow up." My chest tightened, but instead of breaking, I smiled. Quiet, cold, almost dangerous. "Congratulations," I said softly. "But maybe you should check your own mail." There was a pause, the kind where even air feels heavy. They laughed it off, not realizing the truth I'd been hiding for years, because they didn't know the apartment wasn't just mine. The deed, the payments, the silent rescues from debt they thought belonged to them. I was the one secretly paying for their house, and soon the notice in their mailbox would remind them of a fact they had forgotten. When you gamble with someone else's sacrifices, the house of cards eventually falls. That night, staring at the city lights from my now empty apartment, one question echoed in my head. If your own parents sell your future for a party, what do you owe them in return? The night after their call, I couldn't sleep. My bed felt like it was floating in an ocean of betrayal. Every memory of late nights spent budgeting, every skipped dinner to make the mortgage payment, it all replayed in my mind like a cruel joke. I had bought that apartment when I was just 24. Not with anyone's help, not with some family. Trust fund, but with my own two hands. I worked extra hours at the design firm, saved every bonus, denied myself luxuries my friends indulged in. That apartment wasn't just bricks and paint. It was proof I had clawed my way into independence. And now, gone. Sold behind my back. For flowers, for champagne, for a single night where my sister would twirl in her overpriced gown while guests clapped for my parents' sacrifice. But they had forgotten one thing. The house they lived in, the one they bragged about, wasn't truly theirs. Years ago, they had fallen behind on payments. Foreclosure was looming. I remembered Dad's panicked face, Mom's trembling hands as they whispered about losing everything. Out of guilt, out of love, out of some desperate desire to keep the family whole, I stepped in. Quietly, silently. I took over the payments. They never knew it was me because I let them believe some financial miracle had saved them. But miracles don't come free, and that miracle had my name all over it. So, while they mocked me, while they clinked their glasses, I was already holding their future in my palm. The foreclosure notice they'd find wasn't a bluff. It was real. I'd stopped paying their mortgage the day they sold my apartment. Some might call it cruel. I call it balance. Still, as I stood at my empty kitchen counter, staring at the single mug I hadn't packed, a heaviness weighed on me. These were my parents. Should I feel guilt? Remorse? A tiny voice whispered maybe, but louder than that was another thought. They never asked me. They never cared what it cost me. They only cared about appearances. That night, I poured myself a glass of water, lifted it in a bitter toast to the silence, and whispered, "Let the game begin." Because once their mail arrived, the laughter in their house would die. The morning after, I woke to a dozen missed calls. My phone buzzed nonstop, my parents' names flashing across the screen. I didn't answer. I let their panic simmer. By noon, the calls turned into frantic messages. "Ilara, what is this?" Mom's text screamed in all caps. "Are you insane? They're saying we're behind on payments. This must be a mistake." Dad wrote, his words jagged and rushed. I sat at my office desk, sipping coffee slowly, My face calm while my heart pounded with a strange mix of sorrow and satisfaction. They were finally seeing the truth. The house they boasted about wasn't theirs. It never was. At lunch, I scrolled through photos online. There it was. My sister's wedding prep splashed across social media. A glittering hall, diamond centerpieces, designer gowns. My apartment, my life's work, had been exchanged for staged pictures and shallow applause. Comments flooded beneath the posts. Such a dream wedding. Your parents are incredible, sparing no expense. Lucky bride, I almost laughed. None of them knew the real cost. That evening, Dad's voice finally caught me on the line. He didn't sound like the man who once laughed in my ear. His tone cracked. Alara, stop this nonsense. We know you had something to do with this. Fix it. We'll make it up to you after the wedding. After. Always after. My feelings were always postponed, my sacrifices ignored. I closed my eyes, imagining their faces as they opened that envelope. The foreclosure notice stamped in red. Dad, I said softly, almost kindly, I didn't take your house. You gave it away the same way you gave away my apartment. Choices have consequences, he stammered, searching for words, but I ended the call before he found them. For the first time in years, I felt strangely free. Their weight, their constant expectation, their endless taking. All of it was crumbling under its own greed. Still, a question lingered in my mind as I lay down that night. Would this finally teach them? Or would they find another way to blame? Me, either way, I was ready. Because this time, I wasn't the one losing everything. By morning, I'd traded panic for paperwork. I took a late train across town and walked into the glassy branch where I'd first saved them years ago. The same loan officer, Klein, still, wore the same careful smile. He remembered me, the daughter who handled things. I slid a folder across his desk, 12 months of bank confirmations, each one showing my account number funding their mortgage. My name was nowhere on their deed, but the money trail was fluorescent. I'm canceling the automatic payment, I said, effective immediately. He adjusted his glasses. You understand what that means? I do. Please note the contact. Address for all notices. I tapped the line with my name. Send it to them and send me copies. The stamp hit paper. A small sound, like a gavel. Outside, the city felt louder, brighter, crueler. My phone vibrated with a voice note from my sister, sweetened with triumph. Hey, Alara, we heard about whatever stunt you're pulling. It's not going to change anything. The wedding is happening. Try not to ruin our happiness just because you're you. Just because I'm me. The girl who fixed everything and got nothing. At home, I sat at my dining table and built a second folder. This one for truth, screenshots of transfers, email receipts, the day Dad had called me whispering, "Don't tell your mother I asked you," and I'd wired the payment, the month Mom had told. Her friends, God always provides, as my paycheck kept their lights on. I printed each page, slid them behind a clear cover, labeled the spine in neat block letters. House, paid by Alara. By afternoon, the vendors started calling them. I didn't need to sabotage anything. Gravity was doing its work. The venue required final payment 48 hours before the event. The florist wanted the remaining balance by end of day. The photographer would only hold the date if funds cleared. My sister posted another glittering update, a video of her twirling beneath chandeliers. The caption read, "A princess deserves a castle." The comments fawned. I stared at the clip, then at the foreclosure copy on my table. A gray, unromantic sheet with numbers and dates and a deadline that did not care about tiaras. Dad called at dusk. His voice sanded down. Alara, listen. Your mother's upset. We can fix the misunderstanding with the bank if you just restart the payment. After the wedding, after? I kept my tone gentle. Dad, after is a place you send people when you don't plan to pay them back. Silence, except for his breath. I'm not asking for money, he tried. Just time. You already spent my time, I said. 5 years of it, he exhaled. Will you at least come to the rehearsal dinner? Your sister wants a united front. There it was, the performance, the perfect picture. Sure, I said. I'll bring something. What? Receipts? I hung up and looked around my apartment. The last box by the door, the echo of rooms stripped of safety. My hands shook. but not from fear, from certainty. They had taught me that appearances mattered more than honesty. Tomorrow, I would teach them what honesty looks like in daylight. The rehearsal dinner was held in a rented ballroom, dripping with chandeliers and pride. My sister stood at the center in a silver gown, basking in admiration. My parents moved through the room like royalty, their laughter ringing louder than the music, as though nothing outside those doors existed. I arrived in a plain black dress, carrying the folder I had prepared. No sequins, no sparkle, just paper and truth. Their eyes widened when they saw me. "Ilara, you came," Mom said, feigning warmth. Her tone cracked when she noticed the binder in my hand. "What is that?" I smiled politely. "My contribution to the celebration." The dinner dragged with toasts, long why. The fallout began before the dinner plates were cleared. By the time I reached home, my phone was already vibrating non-stop. Missed calls, voicemails, angry texts. My sister's voice cracked through one message. "You've ruined everything. Do you know how embarrassing that was?" Embarrassing. That was the word she chose. Not betrayal. Not injustice. Embarrassing. I muted the phone and brewed myself a quiet cup of tea. For once, the chaos was on their side of the line. The next morning, my prediction came true. The foreclosure notice arrived at their house. I know because Mom sent me a photo of it, her hands shaking so badly the picture blurred. "Please, Ilara," her text pleaded. "The wedding is in 2 days. People will find out. What will the neighbors say?" There it was again. Appearances. Their greatest fear was not losing the roof over their heads, but losing face in front of others. I typed slowly, deliberately. "What did you say to me when you sold my apartment? Family sacrifices for family. Consider this your chance to understand what sacrifice feels like." Hours later, Dad showed up outside my building. He didn't look like the man who once laughed at me over champagne. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair out of place, his eyes red with sleeplessness. "Ilara," he said, voice hoarse, "we can't lose the house. Not now. We'll pay you back, I promise. Just cover it one more time. For your mother. For your sister." I studied him for a long moment. My father, who had once mocked me for being too practical, now begging for the very practicality that had kept them standing all these years. "Dad," I said quietly, "you already spent my forgiveness the day you signed away my apartment. You want me to save your house? Tell me why I should." He opened his mouth. Closed it. No words came. Behind him, I could almost see the life they had built on my silence. The cars, the jewelry, the stage smiles at parties, all of it trembling like glass about to shatter. I turned away, leaving him standing there on the sidewalk. As dusk swallowed the city, that night, I finally slept soundly. Because for once, I wasn't the one carrying their burden. The question was, would they finally crumble, or would they learn? The wedding morning dawned bright, the kind of golden sunlight that photographers pray for. Social media was buzzing. Already, hashtags with my sister's name, guests posting selfies in gowns and tuxedos, captions about the event of the season. I sat by my window sipping coffee, scrolling through it all. Post after post showed a flawless world. But I knew the cracks beneath the gloss. By noon, the calls started again. This time it wasn't my parents. It was vendors. One after another, they left voicemails. Final payment not received. Balance overdue. We'll have to cancel services if this isn't cleared. I didn't need to interfere. Their own neglect was pulling the rug from under them. At 3 p.m., my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally listened, it was my sister's voice, trembling and furious. "Ilara, are you happy now?" The florist walked out. The venue manager is threatening to lock the doors. People are already arriving, and Dad's scrambling like a fool. "You ruined my day." Her day. Not my years. Still, I went. Not for her, but to see the truth bloom. In front of everyone. When I arrived, the ballroom was chaos disguised with perfume. Guests mingled awkwardly, whispering as staff wheeled carts of half-set tables out of the hall. My parents stood near the entrance, pale and frantic. Dad's tie was crooked, Mom's lipstick smeared. They spotted me instantly. "Ilara," Mom hissed, grabbing my wrist. "Please, do something. Don't humiliate us like this. Your sister deserves her moment." I looked around. Stripped flowers, A DJ unplugging his equipment, waiters shaking their heads, guests were already filming, posting, whispering the kind of gossip that spreads like wildfire. Humiliation? I repeated softly. You sold my home for this circus. You laughed in my ear. And now you're worried about humiliation? My sister stormed over. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. You're jealous. That's what this is. You couldn't stand me having something you didn't. I smiled faintly. Jealous? No. Free? Yes. Behind us, a guest muttered loudly enough for the room to hear. Wait, didn't Alara just say she paid for their house? Is that true? The murmurs grew louder. My parents froze, their perfect masks shattered. I walked toward the exit, every step slow, deliberate, like a curtain, falling at the end of a play. And just before the doors closed behind me, I turned back one last time and said, clear enough for everyone to hear. Family sacrifices for family, remember? Welcome to your lesson. The room fell silent, and in that silence, their empire of appearances finally cracked wide open. The wedding never became the spectacle my parents promised. By evening, half the guests had gone home, whispering about unpaid vendors and a canceled reception. The photos my sister dreamed of never happened. No grand entrance, no glowing banquet, no glittering send-off. Instead, the story that spread. Across town wasn't of her princess day, but of the family who lost everything in their hunger for appearances. 2 weeks later, the foreclosure was final. Their house, the pride they flaunted for years, was gone. I drove by once, not to gloat, but to witness the truth of what greed builds. Nothing that lasts. The lawn was unkempt, a for sale sign planted like a gravestone. They tried calling again, softer this time. We can start over, Mom pleaded in one message. Dad's voice cracked in another. We didn't realize how much we took from you, but realization after ruin isn't repentance. It's regret, and regret can't pay back stolen years. I didn't answer. Not because I was cruel, but because I had finally learned. Silence is sometimes the loudest justice. Life, without their demands, felt lighter. I signed the lease on a new apartment. Smaller, but mine. Every corner held peace instead of debt. Every wall echoed with freedom instead of expectation. One evening, I sat by the window as the city lights shimmered. I scrolled past a headline shared on social media. Local family loses mansion days after $100K wedding collapse. Their picture was there, pale, brittle, exposed. I set the phone down and whispered to myself, they thought they sold my future for a party. Instead, they sold their own. Because in the end, the truth wasn't that they robbed me. The truth was that I'd been holding them afloat all along. And once I stepped away, they finally had to live in the world they created. The world without me. And in that quiet, I felt no guilt, only freedom.